Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, I'm going to be talking about Disney's The Finest Hours. Join me, won't you? Set on February 18th, 1952, The Finest Hours tells the true life story of a tanker that actually split in two just off the coast of Massachusetts, which forced Bernie Weber and three of his fellow Coast Guardians on this impossibly dangerous rescue mission. Now, one of my abiding thoughts throughout the watching of this film as I was encountering one fairly solid VFX shot after the other was just, man, they spent a lot of money on this movie, and man, are they not going to make it back. I mean, I went on opening night and there were only 7 people in the theater at the start of the film. By the end, there were only 3. But I suppose I should start by talking about a few of the positives from this experience. I think the one primary thing I could say walking out of the film was, okay, Disney, if your primary objective, your main goal with this was to make as inoffensive of a film as possible, mission accomplished. Which I suppose in a way is nice. It also kind of in a fun way reminded me of being 6 or 7 and wandering around Blockbuster Video with my parents. And yes, I am dating myself, but on these particular occasions, we'd be wandering around and my parents didn't really know what they wanted my brother and I to watch, but they did know they wanted it to be safe. Not too racy, not too overly excessively violent, and this is the kind of film that we would have stumbled across in the far back corner of Blockbuster Video and rented, and probably enjoyed. But then were you to ask my brother and I years later, have you guys seen The Finest Hours? We probably would have forgotten that it even existed. Now, I will say, there is a part of me that can enjoy kind of a big old-fashioned film like this, with their big, broad characters, universal conflicts, uplifting themes, and grand, brightly lit sets. And so often, especially in the engine room of the tanker, I felt like if they just panned right, we'd see a studio tram driving by with a bunch of tourists taking pictures. And on your right here, ladies and gentlemen, we have Disney's The Finest Hours, currently in production, starring Chris Pine and Casey Affleck. And speaking of those guys, I thought all the acting in the film was fine. I mean, everyone does a serviceable job with what they were given, and there were even a couple moments where Chris Pine, Ben Foster, and Casey Affleck actually moved me. One moment in particular, which involved the crew singing in time with the pounding of the waves as they were driving out on their rescue mission, worked quite well. I mean, I will ever be a sucker for those lyrical sequences where they strip things back and just let the music and the visuals kind of tell that story. Unfortunately, that made up maybe about 10 minutes of a 2-hour film, and also, unfortunately, the aforementioned old-fashioned kind of throwback vibe wasn't so endearing for most of the film. In fact, it kind of made things feel extremely rigid and paint by the numbers. Yeah, it was kind of drudgery. In contrast, a film like The Perfect Storm, though absolutely guilty of being a silly, over-the-top 90s action flick, yes, I realize it came out in 2000, still possesses such looseness and actual personality that it's kept afloat. Because the fun of a disaster film, if you can call it that, is watching characters being forced to unite with friend and foe to overcome a common enemy, which in this case is nature. But if we're unable to believe the reality of those characters or can't identify with them in places that we should be able to relate to, i.e. before the storm strikes, we then won't really be able to journey with them into these larger-than-life extreme scenarios with any level of actual investment or empathy. And this is actually something that I thought the film The Impossible did rather well. As ho-hum as that script was, the direction and the acting really allowed me to buy that that family was genuine, so that when the tsunami hit, I really felt like I was there with them. I was shown a family, and I believed it. In contrast, on The Finest Hours, I was constantly being told who these characters were, and more annoying still, how I should feel about them. Like poor Holliday Grainger, whose primary purpose was just to walk in and out of scenes and cry for a bit. Not her fault, and she is a great crier, but I just constantly felt like the filmmakers were saying to me, feel this. And there were also so many of these moments where one character would turn to the other and pretty much say, well, I say there, Chris Pine, what do you say we wax and wane about the past in order to reveal character? Well, I say, Ben Foster, what an excellent idea. Capital indeed. And I don't know if it came from a desire to tighten the film in the edit, which they could have done a lot more of, by the way, but there were a number of moments where we were just thrown into the middle of a scene with characters randomly telling one another, and by extension telling the audience things like, You know this boat more than anyone, therefore you will lead this group of characters. And then off they'd skip to do something that neither they nor we, the audience, really understood. And though it usually is advantageous and desirable to get the audience to participate with the character's experience, that feeling is less of a positive thing when you are feeling maybe, wow, the filmmakers are just as much at a loss over what to do with this film as these men are with their sinking boat. Or if, just like the lead character, the tonier film is as overbearingly quiet and dull as he is himself. Or if, by the end of the film, you and the characters both are struggling to stay awake. Another page that this film really could have borrowed from The Perfect Storm's playbook, so to speak, is just the importance of unique, distinct sequences. So in The Perfect Storm, for example, we have sequences like the men fishing in the rain, the shark attack, the Coast Guard helicopter rescuing those on the sailboat, or the iconic turnaround. And yes, there are a couple solid sequences in The Finest Hours, one of which is actually spoiled on their poster. But still, none of them are as memorable as the ones found on a film like The Perfect Storm, a film which itself is thoroughly mediocre. And something else that a film like this that has a compressed timeline can really struggle to do, and indeed what this film fails to do, is vary things visually. You really need those moments of comedy, of light, of color, and of beauty. Otherwise, things like the rain, the snow, and the sea cease to be cold and dangerous. They just become white noise. You need that calm before the storm. You need that moment of silence before the thunderclap, and you need that darkness before the light. A film like Gravity, for example, is given so much more power because it isn't afraid to pause, to open up, and to show something as beautiful as the aurora borealis. And finally, the themes of sexism and chauvinism were just so overtly broadcast and one-noted that, as real as those issues were, and still are, they were unfortunately robbed of any real power or impact. So to close things out, a disaster film can be a great opportunity to very naturally and realistically test, reveal, and refine character, because what a storm, again, can be is this fantastic crucible that without mercy, without rationale, demands change. And the disaster films that I love most are the ones where the characters need that storm. But if you don't ever know the characters and you're not able to identify with them or given the opportunity, then it just becomes 2 hours of men screaming, women crying, and audiences leaving. So with all that said, I'm only going to give The Finest Hours 2 out of 5. I cannot recommend it, my friends. Still, I would love to know what you guys thought. Did you enjoy the film? What did you enjoy about it? Did you not like it then? And where did it come off the rails for you? Please comment below and let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you all to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.